Have you ever stopped and wondered what's actually going on in your brain when you decide to buy one thing instead of another? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the surprisingly simple science that explains every single choice you make as a shopper. So let's start with a feeling I know you've had. You're standing there in a store aisle. You've got 20 bucks to spend, and you are staring down a wall of choices. You know you can't just have it all. So what's the logic? How do you decide what actually makes it into your shopping cart? You know, this exact feeling, it's so universal, it's actually the bedrock of what's called consumer theory. Economists have a name for it, the problem of choice. And believe me, they have thought a lot about how we solve it. So let's do it. Let's walk through the two key clues that economists use to model our behavior. And you'll see how, when you put them together, they can pretty much predict exactly what you're going to buy. All right, let's dive right in. The very first piece of this puzzle is just figuring out what you want. And to do that, economists needed some way to actually measure happiness or satisfaction. So they came up with this idea called utility. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is just happiness points. Everything you consume, whether it's a coffee or a new phone, gives you a certain amount of utility. The more you want it, the more happiness points it has. Simple as that. But here's the catch with satisfaction. It isn't a flat line. I mean, think about eating a pizza. That first slice, oh, it's heavenly, right? The second one is still really, really good. But by slice number 4 or 5, the magic's kind of gone. And this table right here, it puts some numbers to that feeling. Just look at that marginal utility column. That's the extra happiness you get from one more slice. The first slice gives you a whopping 12 happiness points. The second one only adds 6 more. Now, look what happens by the 6th one. You're at -2. It's actually making you less happy. You're officially overstuffed. This chart is just a great picture of a core idea in economics, the law of diminishing marginal utility. All it means is the more you have of something, the less extra enjoyment you get from the next one. This simple idea, which you totally already knew intuitively, is the first key to unlocking your choices. Okay, obviously, we don't walk around assigning happiness points to stuff in our heads. That'd be weird. So economists came up with a much cooler way to map our wants, indifference curves. Think of it like this. Any mix of mangoes and bananas on a single curve makes you equally happy. You are literally indifferent between them. And your goal in life? It's always to climb to the highest, most outward curve you can possibly reach. That's where peak happiness lives. Okay, so we've got a map of what you want. But let's be real. Knowing what you want is only half the story. The second clue is way more down to earth. What can you actually afford? And this is what's called your budget line. I like to think of it as a hard financial fence. Based on your income and what things cost, this line shows the absolute limit of what you can buy. Every single spot on this line represents a combination of, say, bananas and mangoes that would spend your entire budget down to the last penny. You can buy anything on the line or inside of it, but you absolutely, positively cannot afford anything outside that fence. And this is a perfect visual for what happens when life changes. You get a pay raise, your whole fence shifts outwards, which opens up a ton of new possibilities. But if your income goes down, that fence closes in, and your choices get a lot more limited. It's a perfect picture of your real-world purchasing power. All right, so now we have the two critical pieces of the puzzle. Our map of what we want, those indifference curves, and our map of what's possible, that budget line. Time to put them together and find the perfect choice. First up, let's bring back our dose of reality. Here's the budget line. This is your financial fence, the hard limit you cannot cross. And now, let's overlay our map of desires right on top of it. Remember, the whole game is to get to the highest, most outward happiness curve you can. And there it is. The solution, the absolute best choice you can make, your personal sweet spot, is that single, unique point where your budget line just gently kisses the highest possible happiness curve it can reach. So here's the big takeaway. A rational person is always going to choose the combination of goods right at that point. Why? Because any other point you can afford is on a lower happiness curve, and any point on a higher curve is outside your financial fence. It's just not possible. This is it, the most bang for your buck. Okay, this is all a really neat theory, but so what? Why does it matter? Well, it matters because this whole thing, this entire structure we just built, beautifully explains one of the most famous laws in all of economics. You already know the law of demand deep down. When something gets cheaper, people tend to buy more of it. And when something gets more expensive, people buy less. It's just common sense. And that common sense rule is why this classic demand curve always slopes downwards. But the theory we just walked through, with utility and budget lines and sweet spots, that is the reason why. It's not just a rule of thumb, it's a direct outcome of people making rational choices. Think about how it works. Let's say the price of bananas suddenly drops. Now, your income didn't change, but your spending power did. Your budget line, your financial fence, actually pivots outward. This pivot lets you reach a brand new, higher happiness curve, a new sweet spot. And what happens at that new sweet spot? Almost every time, you end up buying more of the very thing that just got cheaper. That is the law of demand in action, and it comes directly from this model. Which leaves us with a fun final thought. We make dozens of these little calculations every day, mostly without even thinking about it. But now you know the hidden logic. You're always trying to reach your highest happiness curve without jumping over your budget fence. So the question is, now that you know the theory, will it change the practice?